I'll be honest, this may be the most pain I've ever been in.
Hi guys, I'm Cal, I'm the CEO of TwpZen, where mental health matters, and today I'm going to be talking you through dealing with a broken bone and if ice actually helps. I do talk about ice and cold exposure a lot. For the last 7 years I've been doing cold exposure, banging the Wim Hof drum, trying to tell everyone about it, and I'm not here to say that's a bad thing at all. However, I didn't realise the full extent of an injury because I'd never really had an injury before. It was the first time I've ever broken a bone and had surgery as well. So there's a lot of things I've had to unlearn, which is a big part of TwpZen. Again, sometimes you grow up knowing these things, but it's just like it gets told to one person and it gets told to another person and it just becomes law, even though the science...
Actually, no, we've changed our mind.
So apparently in 1978 there was some guy called Gabe Merkin, and he came up with this theory of rice. Crazy, I know. But rest, elevate, no, rice is rest, ice, elevate, rest. 4 letters, am I getting this wrong? So rice, oh my god, not rice, rest, ice, compression, elevation. And that was then implemented into sports, and athletes were then starting to use ice and compression. Probably lesser known is that he came out a few years later, I think 2003, 2013, there's a 3 in there. But he came out and said, actually, guys, I'll hold my hand if I got it wrong. Which is a big part of, again, TwpZen, like, you've got to unlearn certain things and be able to say, I made a mistake, or I didn't realise the full truth of the situation, which is what this video is about, because I was using ice and doing my cold therapy, and I was not getting the results I thought I was going to get. I actually ended up in more pain.
This sucks.
So when I got home after breaking my elbow, because I didn't go to A&E straight away because I was stubborn, but I put my elbow in ice straight away, and it kind of helped a little bit with the pain, but when I took it out, problems started. And obviously I went to the hospital, I got my cast put on, so I was in a cast for like 5 days I think. So I did a couple of cold showers in the house. Obviously I couldn't get my cast in there, but it was quite funny to maneuver that around and still get that cold shower done, even though I had so many excuses not to. But I'll show you a little bit of that now, just because it's funny.
Smiling. There we go. Embrace the suck, embrace the pain.
So the main reason I've been using cold exposure and getting into cold showers for the last 7 years, and more recently getting into ice baths and doing my cold plunges daily outside, it's saved my brain, my mental state. It's changed my mind, literally. From being afraid of things and backing out to being able to just make one small decision in the morning. And I think there's a phrase like, if you eat the frog first thing in the morning, I think that's it, just eat the frog first thing in the morning. But everything else in that day, nothing compares to the stress of that morning, but it's not that bad. Once you get into it a few times, it actually becomes kind of fun. It's like working out. You just got to get over that initial first hurdle, that first barrier. So the reason I carried on doing my cold showers is because, you know, I'll talk about this, I put a video up next week where I'm going to be grateful that I broke my elbow. I know, crazy. But I wanted to show myself that yes, I can still do things for myself. And I also knew that, you know, I live alone and I was dealing with this myself. And, you know, if I slipped back into the old Callum, I was going to have some serious problems and fall into a deep depression. So I had to make sure every single day I still got in that cold shower and did what I could. So a couple of days after surgery, when I got home, I still had the bandage on, that was on for a few days. So I still couldn't do my showers properly. So I wanted to take care of my hands. So currently my hands are looking all right. Yeah, not too bad. But my left hand was swollen like crazy. It was kind of funny to see, really. But I couldn't do anything. I literally couldn't even make a fist, couldn't do any of that without like a lot of pain, and literally it was so fat it wouldn't move. So I wanted to make sure I could do something, so I did an ice bath for my hand. So I'll play you some of that now, but that was actually interesting because that did actually help me a lot. And after that day, the swelling went down a lot in my hand and the pain wasn't too bad. Yeah, but this hand is like proper swollen. You can't really see the bruises in this light, or at least I can't see it from here. Anyway, enough talking. Where are we at? We're at 4.9 degrees Celsius. Oh, that feels warm. Like spicy. Now you're probably going to see the temperature go up. I'll be honest, not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Not that bad. So, it wasn't much of a shock reaction today. Again, I've done my cold shower this morning and you'll see that there wasn't much of a shock in that one either. It's good to know that when you stay still, you build a thermal layer around your body, your core temperature. So there's like it's a layer of water around you that's warmer than the water elsewhere. So when you're moving, like such, you're getting rid of that thermal layer. So I'm not sure what the temperature's saying there. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Let's bring it up for you there. You tell me what that is, yeah? 3.8, so yeah, so by moving it around, you're getting rid of that thermal layer. I'll be honest, I'm not like trying to show off or anything. You'd be able to see by my reactions. This is genuine. I'm doing all right. Like, it feels cold. Probably the coldest, I have subjected myself to. I've compartmentalized it. So I do talk about pain in my book and my videos, but pain for me is something that I was really bad at dealing with growing up. That barrier that I always thought that was like, that's my limit. That's not. You don't even imagine it, and you don't even see that as your limit. You just know it's something tells you like that's your limit, but it's not. You're capable of doing so much more than you think you are. It's like I draw my attention to it, and then I'm like, okay, there's pain. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. When you do go deep within yourself and you talk and you say, hey, anxiety, thank you. I'm aware. I don't need protection right now. I'm good. We've been here before, or I know what's going to happen. And again, that's the advantage of routine, momentum, consistency, something I do talk about a lot in my morning routine videos. Just as long as you've got momentum and consistency, you're able to look back and go, all right, even though I'm arguing with myself now, arguing with my inner bitch, I realized that I did this yesterday and I had this conversation yesterday and I still got it done. So it's just a warning system, it's like it's an overprotective parent. They don't necessarily know why they're stepping in to protect you, but they have a feeling, an impulse to look after you. And even though, like, especially with parents, I think that's a good example, but you could tell them, like, no, this is good for me, but they don't understand because it's an old way of thinking, or they're not used to all these, different ways of doing things. It's probably unsafe to go too crazy right now. So I'm going to take my hand out. What are we at? 3.2. I'm very happy with that. So, not crazy red. Kind of like vibrating a little bit. Obviously, like, I can feel it deep into the bone, but it doesn't feel, bad necessarily. It does hurt, don't get me wrong. No, I'm acknowledging that it does hurt, but I'm also like, I'm not reacting to the pain. It's all a mental game, It is all a mental game. If you look at Darren Brown putting his hand over the candle, he's in his happy place. With me, my advantage is every time I want to do something scary, I put the camera on, and that actually helps me get stuff done, because I'm like, oh, camera's on now, I'm wasting battery, I'm losing storage space. I'm just going to warm my hand up naturally, allow that blood to start flowing. Maybe I'll raise it up a little bit. Well, if you can't hear me through here, you'll hear me through here. I'm always doing that, always messing up the recording. If you see the ADHD video, here's a big test. Oh, passed with flying colours. There we go. Cheers, guys. That is a right touch. TwpZen, I can do it. And because I was in such a good mood, obviously you get these big dopamine surges when you do cold therapy, just from putting my hand in the ice water. I think I got down to like 3 or 4 degrees, and I wanted to carry on that momentum. So I actually ended up playing guitar for the first time in a couple of weeks and singing a little song. Obviously it wasn't perfect, like everything I do, but that's life. But being able to do that was a big sense of pride, and being able to actually move my hand actually helped me keep that momentum going and keep, I'm trying to show you that, doing air guitar, keep stretching my hand, keep going through the motions. I only did the one hand bath, but just that one time was actually quite beneficial to me. So I'm putting that video out next week where I'm going to show a lot more about my elbow recovery and a lot more detail of what happened and how it affected me in my mental state, which is obviously the entire point of TwpZen, what the entire website and the channel is about. But I'll also put that video up of me playing the song, just because, you know, it's not that bad. I did make a fair few mistakes, but I was playing with a broken elbow, and it was the first time singing, and excuses. I couldn't go back and redo it, which again, sometimes I think fate works out in my favor when it's frustrating, because I wanted to go back and redo it, but I literally just couldn't. Since that day, that I think the bandage came off a few days later, and then I was just in agony because the swelling went down, but the pain went skyrocketing up. So I couldn't redo it. So I'm just going to put that up there. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't. But hopefully you'll see next week's video where I break down all my elbow recovery in a lot more detail, and again, more focus on the mental health side of it. So when the bandage did come off a few days after I did that song, I started going back into the cold. Obviously I hadn't learned the new science by then, so I was wrapping, like I put a towel in the freezer, was wrapping that around, and it just wasn't getting any better. Like I just couldn't understand why the pain wasn't going away, because I thought cold is good, you know, inflammation bad, we need to reduce the inflammation, bring up the swelling, blah blah blah. But literally I put it on, and then once it would get warm, I'd take it off, and then the pain would be insane. So I just had to stop doing it, and I had to like find what was going on. So I started going through Reddit and old Huberman Lab podcasts. So Andrew Huberman, like the world's most famous neuroscientist at the minute, like incredible depth of knowledge, but he does break things down in a really nice common sense way. And it is frustrating sometimes listening to him, because you just have to unlearn things, and opinions are slower to change than the science. Science is always, it's not changing, but it's evolving. We're learning new things and having to, you know, go, oh right, this was slightly incorrect, this is the correct way to do things. And you know, we can get, you know, annoyed about it, we can get sad, or we can just go, okay, that's what needs to be done. So I will talk about this in the video I'm putting out next week, where I'm grateful that I broke my elbow. So having to unlearn things is kind of annoying, but really beneficial if you can just go, okay, what is the best way to do the thing I need to do? So what Andrew Huberman was talking about was, yeah, inflammation is good. It may be painful, but it needs to happen. It's your body's natural defense. It needs to finish doing what it started. And if you're getting in the way of yourself healing, again, short-term versus long-term, then, you know, what's the point really? So you're choosing short-term, not pleasure, you're just less pain. So what I started doing then was using heat. So I have to keep it dry, obviously. So I was like, oh, how am I gonna warm this up if I can't use my shower or use hot water? So I started using my hairdryer, which is actually really good. That's actually helped me a lot as well when I start doing my physio. Obviously just hairdryer my elbow before I have to do my stretches and stuff, and it is very painful. But when I do the heat therapy first, it actually makes things a lot easier. So overall, what I've learned is ice, as much as I do love cold exposure and ice baths, not the best thing for a broken bone. And you know, if you want to crack on doing that, all the best. It's going to hurt, and you're just going to prolong your healing. So, you know, suck it up, get through it. You'll be all right. You will get there in the end, as I'm sure I will. I do have some range of motion. Like, I think I'm back to 90 degrees here. Oh, look at that. Oh, showing off, and I can touch my nose. So I'm really happy with that. I've been cracking through my physio and going to carry on doing my heat therapy on my elbow and cold everywhere else. So it's a nice mix. So my brain is, you know, not going to go through depression again, and hopefully my arm will heal quickly and effectively. So if you are out there with a broken bone, stay away from the ice on that specific part, and, you know, try and do cold wherever you can anyway. Keep your breathing going. Keep doing your physio. Oh my God, it sucks sometimes, and it's I think it's more painful thinking about it sometimes than actually doing, because once you start, it's not so bad. But yeah, it's got to be done. and I hope you get better soon if you do have any injuries out there. So Tup out, TwpZen. Still kind of sucks doing that, but yeah, you got this, you can get through this, and I will see you on the other side.